So okay, we've had a good look around it. We're happy that all the panel lines are back in where they should be. Obviously the primer coat is all laying down flat. Looking at little things like the panel lines to making sure they're okay. Obviously if there's any blocked up, you can pop along and rescribe them out. So basically you're happy till you get to this point. Now, normally this is where you'd start your normal painting. You could just put on your paint and away you go. Now if you do, you're coming back to the modelling, it's your first time, I would say go straight ahead and bypass what we're going to do next. If you feel a bit more adventurous, or you do this all the time, then you can do what we call pre-shading. Now pre-shading is just basically making shadows under the paint. So all we do, take our flat black, or I've actually got a satin black here, few drops in the airbrush. I'm using Vallejo Model Air as per normal. Check our flow, how it's coming out of the airbrush, and you're happy. Now we'll start on the top and I'll show you a little bit and then I'll carry on with it without boring you to death for showing you every bit. So basically, usual thing, big panel lines get big things, so obviously things like round flaps, ailerons, anywhere where dirt is going to really accumulate, it gets a lot more. Now don't forget, it doesn't matter how squiggly your pattern is, it doesn't have to be neat, it can be a real horrible job, because as long as it's random on your model, it'll appear random through the paint. If it is all perfect, you get like a grid effect on the top of your paintwork when you see it. So by varying the depth and bigger lines and thinner lines, you'll just vary the tone, and that is really what you're after. So if we just do we'll pick out some little bits, as I say, quite big thick for those areas. Because of the scale, it's quite small anyway. We're not going to be worried about this too much, because we need to accentuate the lines and make them look a lot heavier than they are, so the scale effect sort of shows through. Now whilst we're doing this with a flat black, there's little areas on the leading edge of the wings and on the tail which are like de-icing areas, and they're flat black as well. So what we're going to do is spray them and then we can mask them up before our top final coat of paint goes on. So we're just going to pick out a little bit of air running out of there. Let the air pressure come up. And there we go, and you just follow around all those really big panel lines until you've got everything completely covered. And at the same time we're going to do the tails as well, so it's all done. Okay, so what we've got next is the actual painting of the first coat of paint. Now what I've done here to sort of show you lots of things at once, I've masked up already part of the black area at the front, and I've done one down here. Now I haven't done the other wing because I'll show you how you could do it before and after type of thing. So we're going to do half with, half without. And then what we'll do is, once it's been sprayed, I'll show you how to mask it the other way. So all I literally did was a strip of masking tape down, then another one over the top on this side, and then stuck them together, and away you go. Pretty straightforward stuff. Right, for this little one, we're going to be using the Extra Acrylics, which is Hannon's own brand paint. Right, there you go. This is for the dark camo grey, which is the BS 629 colour, which is the X36. So we give it a very good shake, because it is the one thing with their paint. Some people have said to me they don't like it, it spits, it blocks the airbrush. A lot of that is not having a good mix. Also, I've heard people say about you shouldn't shake paints, but honestly, if it's going to be atomised, I don't think it really matters how you do it. So we'll give that a good shake. Okay, airbrush, we're back to our normal 0.4 needle. Whoops, throws that around. Okay, ratios mixture. Starting off, we're going to go in at that 50-50. So we're doing 50% paint to 50% thinners, just to start with. He's left his steering stick behind, so we give that a bit of a mix. That's the other thing as well, with all paints when you're spraying them, make sure they've had a damn good mix, because what happens is you sometimes get lumps in it, a bit of toothpastey type things of paint where it's thicker, and obviously when it gets down in the chamber to be atomised, it can't, it spits, it backs up, and then you have all types of problem. Okay, so all you do is push it up the side of your colour cup to see what it's like. That's great. Okay, now obviously for this one it's literally just the underside. The top side is a darker grey. So we'll just flip it over. We'll check our paint flow, all coming out nicely. Now first pass, as usual, very light. Nice, steady. Now remember, don't keep going over and over, because you want this pre-shading to sort of stand there and to stand out a bit. So little light coat to start with. Keep your airbrush moving. Even air and paint flow, and just putting on. There we go. Then every now and again, like now I've just cut to air, there's no paint coming through, and we're just going to dry off. And as you can see, the dark bits are showing through, because as it dries it will show through. Now, just flip some of that on. It tries to do without spilling it. Okay, we'll carry on. Another coat, just building up the layer. And remember, don't hang around in one place too long. Now if I just bring you out a moment, so you can see sort of an overall of me doing it. When you're spraying, obviously paint is very thin, and it doesn't take long to build up layers and then to very quickly turn from being nice paint to having huge runs. So like now, this is just air, introducing a little bit of paint, gently pulling back on the trigger, and when you've got paint coming through, we go over, and as you say, you build up the layers, but you're not trying to stick it all down in one. In some ways we're different from when you're painting perhaps with cans and things like that, because here we're trying to build up colour. We're not trying to slap it down in one pass, we're actually building up the colour as we go. So there we go, we're getting there like that, and that's a bit tricky for you to see, but as you can see that top wing there, up here, how dark it's gone, and that's because it's dried, and the bottom one's got one coat more, so you can see the difference. All it takes is a little coat. So when you're spraying, especially smaller models like this, in some ways it's more tricky to do it than it is actually on the bigger. The bigger ones you can make small mistakes and get away and you'll never see them. Small planes like this though, really you can't make any mistakes because everything's sort of magnified. So that's why it's best to take your time and just build up those layers, and then every now and again, like now, just cut to air, there's no paint coming out and we're just blowing it and drying off this acrylic as we go. Now if you're using enamels, obviously you're not going to have this luxury of this drying so quick. But I must admit, it's why I like acrylics, not only from a health point of view, because they're quick, you can see instant results of what you've got, and you don't have to leave it for hours to be able to see. You can see it straight away. Now remember, we're not trying to destroy that pre-shading, we're just trying to make a nice even coat over the top and let the pre-shading show through. Now if it's really black area, perhaps you went a little bit over the top and it's a huge big black mark still showing underneath, but just keep building up the layers until it's evened out with the rest. And there we go, we're all done. So what we're going to do is just slide this onto the clamp stand we've got there at the moment, just like so. We're going to let that dry off now. As you can see, we just got it on here, so it's nice, it's upright, it can dry. Now being acrylic, obviously it's going to dry extremely quickly, so whilst that's all drying, we can then start on these other parts like the tails, fuel tanks, pylons, all those things that are attached. So what we've done now, we've just got our leftover paint still in there. I've just literally given it 3 drops of white Valero. Now we're mixing technically a gloss with a flat, so this will come out with a sort of satiny finish. Now when you're mixing 2 different brands of paint together, it's important you mix really, really well. I've also added a couple of drops of thinner just to keep it all quite thin and on the move. Now this is going to do 2 things. One, we'll just get it going. We're just going to clean this needle off a touch. A little bit of build up. Like so. Okay. We thinned it down. It's going to serve 2 purposes there, and we're going to do the undercarriage with it as well, because on these aircraft the undercarriage is actually a lighter grey. So we can do that, as well as we can do all those centre panels. Now if you see me do it on other models, you'll know what we're going to do. This is just sort of an extra little thing, if you like, that goes with that, with the pre-shading that we did. This is sort of like a post shading, and all we're literally going to do is add little area of white of this lightened grey into the middle of all the big panels, just to break it up a little bit and give it a bit of tonal difference. So okay, we've masked up this side completely, as you may be able to see. Literally just follow the lines as per the instructions. Although if you are doing it, remember the tail is a different colour, but then don't worry about it. It's completely on the instructions for the colours. As I say, if you follow this one, lower half is the lighter grey, and then top half is the darker grey, which is the same colour for the Harriers and the other bits and pieces like that. So anyway, all I'm doing is using quite a thick one. I think this is the 18mm Tamiya tape, tucking it in behind those air intakes. So we're level with the top part, if you like, and then we're just following it, the top edge down like so. So make sure you're equal, have a look down it and make sure your lines are the same on both sides. So there's that one in, and then if you get a cotton bud and just give it a rub, you'll make sure you get any areas out and it's pushed down nice and tight. So we've just got to do this part around the air intakes. Now what you also can do for handling your model, if you're going to be holding it in a particular spot, like I probably will, like there, if you put a little bit of tape around it, it'll just protect your paintwork. Obviously because it's acrylic, this isn't totally dry. It's dry to the touch and dry on top, but underneath it's still going to be wet. So what happens is the heat off your hand will actually melt the top layer and you end up leaving fingerprints around it all. So that's what's happening there. So anyway, we're going to change colours now. I'll just sort out the airbrush. We're going to change colours and we're going to put the dark colour on the top. Right, so we've loaded up now. We've now got the dark sea grey, which is X4. About 25% thinners. This is a thicker coat going on the top. And we're just keeping it flat down and just spraying the top, random area. We're just building up the areas as we do the others. Little short passes on this one. So there we go, that's that nicely done. Now, as I say, we're running out of paint in here, so we're going to do the same thing, just take that to 50% thinner, so if you like now 25, and then we're just going to put, for this, because it's a dark colour, you won't need much white. So literally we do one drop, just like that, and we give that a good old mix up. Now this will lighten it somewhat to near what's on the bottom anyway, by one drop, because there isn't a vast difference between the colours. There is if you've got a sharp line, but if you was to blend the two and just spray a line next to each other, you won't probably notice that much of a difference. So anyway, that's that, and obviously we've got to blow through. Let's get the compressor on. We're going to blow through that colour to get the colour through, because there's quite a lot in the chamber here. But you can see the colour when it comes out. So we're going to do the same as we did for the underside. We're just going to pick out individual panels. Okay, so one final thing, getting a bit carried away, we've still got to do the steel areas at the back. So what I've done, pretty extensively masked up, and for this one we're going to be using titanium silver, which is X32 with Tamiya. And all we do, we just lightly blow in, just a little light, and let it build up. Right, then we're going to leave that to one side, and we've just got the exhaust nozzles to do, so we're going to do them as well. And there we go, there's the back end, the titanium area. Obviously we've got to do the back bit black, but as I say, that's basically, we're all finished now. So we've got our little tails, which can be fitted now, just like so, and we're sort of looking like a Jaguar. Alright, so we moved on a little bit. As you can see, we've got the exhaust nozzles fitted in the back, they're done, and we've got the tail planes on as well. Now what I've done here, I've masked up for the gun area. Now being gloss, that's going to take a few moments to dry, so if we just stick that up on there like that. Right, and there you go, we're basically now in a position for decaling. Now, because we've used a gloss type of paintwork by using the extra acrylics, because it's gloss based, we can decal straight onto those without the need of actually using a gloss coat down first. If you wanted to, you could just give it a coat of future, or you can move straight on. We get out the decals, as that bit's drying. Obviously they're in sections on this one, so we'll just cut out obviously this one down here for these, because we're going to be using these and the common decals, and we'll place them on. I won't go through it with you on this, I'll just get on with it and show it at the end. There is obviously a separate section just on decaling, so I won't bore you to death with doing this bit. So I'm going to go ahead and decal this one, and then I'll see you when it's done. Okay, so decaling's totally done now. Quick little tip, if you get yourself a bit of kitchen towel, you've allowed your decals all to dry for about, sort of half hour or so, but you get that little milky look around the outside. If you just moisten, just lick a bit of towel and give it a rub around the area, and you'll remove those marks away. Now, the good thing about removing them and take it all back down to sort of fresh paint again is that if you don't, you'll end up with those marks being left there, so when you lacquer you'll still see them around there, and obviously that's not too good. And now that's ready for a gloss coat to go on to seal all those decals on and to get them sort of welded nicely in place, and then we can leave that for sort of 12-24 hours before it has a wash coat over the top. So okay, decaling is all done now. So as those are still drying off, they're basically all dry to the touch, but obviously I just need them to totally settle down. So we'll give them another half hour. So what I'm going to do now is we can paint up these wheel wells. Now, two ways to do this. We could obviously just mask and spray it, or you could do it by hand. Now, the inside of the wheel wells on Jaguars is what's coming in as Yuck Yellow, which is a sort of a greeny yellow. Now, quite a good match for that is XF4 Tamiya acrylic, which we're going to use, and I haven't used this one for a long time. So we're going to give this a damn good shake up and show you a little bit of paint brushing. So there we go. As I say, it's quite a funny colour, but it does do well. Now, obviously you could use a small brush, your favourite brush. Because we're doing this type of painting, I quite actually like to use a flat brush. So I've just got one here, quite a small one. Let's give that a good clean out. So all we'll do, we'll just take it from the cap here, okay, and from the inside, we're just going to paint it those areas. Now, if you do get it on the outside, being acrylic, if you do it straight away, you can wipe them off with your finger. There we go, just like that. So we've got the back one done, and it doesn't go on that back part of the speed brake, so literally it's just the hole. And do it like that. So if you take your time, you can just paint them up. Or as we say, you could just mask it and spray it, or we could have done it before and put the wheel wells on, but I wanted to show you the quick brush way. This is certainly the fastest way of doing it. It's pretty easy to get in everywhere with the brush. You may need to have 2 coats of it, but for a single coat job like that, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we're going to wash the Jag. Now we're going to be using the dark wash. Okay, so 20 minutes has gone on. As you can see, in some areas it's quite gritty and patchy, but it's all on there. And obviously, sometimes you might think, oh, it's not in a panel line, but when we're going to work it in, it'll all go into the panel lines anyway. But as you can see, you can't see the panel lines, and it all seems to be the same colour. So what we do, usual thing, we moisten our cloth. If I just do under here. Now, this is quite a smooth finish. If you've got a lovely smooth finish, don't moisten it too much. Very thin. What I tend to do is just rub off any excess off in your hand like that, and then circular motions, not pushing heavy because you don't want to be dragging it out, but we just do light little rubs all over your area, and then you can roughly see how it is. Also, the thing is, you can add to your weathering. If you then cut to no moisture at all, just turn your cloth over and give it a rub. Now, you might want it to be quite a dirty looking model, and that's the quickest and fastest way you're going to be able to do it, and that's looking quite dirty. So if I do this wing, this is no moisture on the cloth, we're just giving it a rub round because we've gone over gloss. We can do it like that, and as you can see, or I hope you can see, you get sort of different effects by different moistures. So what I'll do is, we'll just moisten this one, okay, and we're going to give a rub, and I hope you can see those panel lines coming to life. If I bring you in a bit, like so. Now, the thing to remember, when you gloss over this in a moment or give it a flat coat, it will darken up. So if you're looking at the moment thinking, you know, it's not exactly bright, is it? Perhaps I should have used the black, for instance, which is a common question I get asked when I'm doing any of my weathering, is using black for panel lines. If you use black on panel lines, you get this real overkill. They stand out and look too bright. Yet if you're using the grey that I've done here, 90% of cases, it's good enough and it will look fine. Just 10% funny colours, dark greens, you know, obviously things like blacks and very dark blues. So all we'll do, we'll carry on round here, and I'll show you a couple of little tips as we do. So if I just do under here, and remember, when you're doing this, you're not so much wiping off as you're working in. So when you're actually going round with it all, don't think you're wiping off the wash. You're actually working it into the panel lines as well. So use circular motions and push it in, because that any areas where you've missed and there's a little gap, it'll work it in there and save you going round afterwards. Now obviously you could pop around afterwards and think, oh look, there's not enough in that panel line, and give it a bit more. Also, if you've got a panel line and all of a sudden there's a dip and it's perhaps there's a fault or there's a little bit of plastic or something's happened, you can just put a little bit of rescribe there. Just get your P-cutter out or your rescribing tool, rescribe a little line, and then just pop the wash in, and you won't need to paint it because the wash will fill it up. Obviously, you know, you won't get the plastic colour because the wash will be in the hole, and so forth. So that's it. Once you've done, obviously, you know, you finished your thing, make sure you go back and forth in the direction of the airflow or do draggy little marks like that, and that will get it all out of any areas, and anything that is left behind will give you that natural sort of worn look. And as long as you're going with the direction of the airflow, it gives a very nice pattern. Now if we just come over to this side, we'll just show you a couple of little bits just getting in there. Obviously it's very tricky sometimes when you're getting in there to get in right angle areas and tricky little shapes like down in here. Now what you can do, a cotton bud just like this, or your Q-tip, pinch the end out of your teeth and wet it so you get a little pointy thing going on like this. Okay, then you can get in that angle there and you give a rub out. Now if you've got a situation where perhaps, like I've got a little tiny dark patch there, that's also a little dent. Now it's going to stand out too much. So if you take a brush, you know, I've got a little flat brush here, okay, wet the end and then just give it a rub up and down that joint in there. You can see that too well, there we go. In that joint, up and down, come back with your Q-tip, your cotton bud, and give it a rub, and it will get rid of it. Otherwise it's going to stand out far too much, and you know, to be honest, I've seen it on a couple of things now where you've got that sort of thing going on where it stands out a little bit too much. But that's a quick little way of being able to get in there and get rid of things like that happening. Obviously get in all your areas you can and just work it all in. And remember, this is you know, just part of a weathering process. If you wanted to, obviously you could build it up, give it another coat and then build it up, and you know, and you can work on it. Remember, you know, have fun with it. It's easy. You can just, you know, leave it on, like on this back area with these tails, and we're just doing this with a dry cloth. And perhaps you would want a worn look if you're doing armour, things like that especially, then you can go around and do it all like that. But certainly experiment with the wash. If you're doing it over a gloss coat like we've done this, there's no risk to anything. The only time you're ever going to have problems is if, to be honest, your paintwork is really, really rough and it's like sandpaper, you know, but there again, the wash is designed to really help you with this, and it should come off. That's why the wash is so good with novices when you're starting out, especially with your airbrushing, getting your paint to feel right and look right, and then obviously you come along with a wash, especially an oil wash, and it will never come off. With this stuff, it should, you know, really work with you and help to come off. So we just lick this again and pull out. But if you've got in a situation like this one is, where it's 1/72 scale, the panel lines are very, very thin, you know, they're very easy to lose. Obviously just a very, very lightest of cloths, of brushes with the cloth. And remember, finishing always in the direction of your airflow, you know, to give you that sort of dirt blown out look. Now obviously on the top here we're a darker colour, and this is where a lot of people when they're using it have said to me it doesn't show up. Well, I beg to differ, but if I just show you something here, this is quite wet. There we go, and can you see those panel lines? Literally I've just rubbed roughly over, look how dark they are. Now the thing is, like in here, that will go that dark when it's got the gloss coat over the top. Now if I do the other wing, this is not wet, this is just wiping it off. You see, we can't see any really, nothing going on there. Obviously we wet it, look how it comes to life. You know, this is the thing, when you're going to put your gloss coat over the top, it will get darker. Many a time I've had people say to me, you know, you can't see it, it needs the black, you know, can you make the black? You don't really need it, just have a little bit of faith that it will get darker when it's wet. And what happens is, when you put that gloss coat over the top, when it goes down, it will darken your panel lines, very, very nicely. So don't worry about it. So I'm going to get all the wash off now, and we'll show you when we actually put the gloss coat on how dark it will go.